Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 16th of June now. As always, we encourage you and your village to stay up to date on the local weather happenings around Alaska by going to weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov online. The weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter during the day, and on YouTube in the afternoon, of course. And if you search for AKwx TV after this show in the evening hours, you'll get the availability to watch the complete show. If you're too busy or still out at port and you want to watch the entire show that way on your phone, it should work a lot better and fairly easily on your cell phone plan there. Here's a look at the hazardous weather conditions across the interior, southwest, and south central Alaska. Everything in red right now is a red flag warning, with the orange areas a fire weather watch. Red flag conditions require either low humidity, gusty winds, or both, or the threat of lightning. And when all of those factors combine in the right way, we have conditions that are more favorable for fire to spread. So we have across south central and the interior conditions that are not only hot and dry, but thunderstorms have formed across the Alaska range a little bit further south toward the Talkeetnas actually, and we've seen some growth across south central. And the possibility exists that with that, and of course the lower humidity and the erratic winds that thunderstorms can produce when they're especially drier thunderstorms, not producing very much if any precipitation, that they could start or certainly fan the flames that are already present. So not great conditions across south central, southwest, or the interior as we head into tonight and again tomorrow. The fire weather watches as we head into tomorrow. So here's what we see down in southwest. Continued hot and dry conditions there as well, and very low humidities across most of the southern third of Alaska. So fire weather conditions not in the best shape across the region. Now, on top of the fire weather red flag warnings and the fire weather watches we also note that high fire danger exists really all the way out to areas just east of Kotzebue Sound through the middle Yukon Valley, and as we saw, fire red flag warnings there out across southwest. But we also have unusually dry conditions across northern parts of southeast and up around the Copper River Basin and south toward Prince William Sound. So it's not just the places that actually have the red flag warnings or the fire weather watches. It's really a much larger place, much larger region within Alaska at this point that has at least heightened fire danger, if not extreme fire danger, as we go into tomorrow. So here's a look at the Bering Sea and the North Pacific, and notice what you don't see across the Bering or across the North Pacific. There really isn't a whole lot of storm activity here. When we check on the visible satellite picture in a moment, you'll notice a lot of low stratus clouds and fog across the Aleutians and the Bering, but the main storm track is well to the south, and this is where we would be finding a better chance for some cooler, wetter weather kind of relief. All this is way out of reach for southwest, south central, and even southeastern Alaska at this point. So the weather wave train, as it moves off of eastern Asia, is pretty much going from west to east. We have high pressure here sitting across the Bering Sea, and that is sending any moisture pretty much further to the north. Now, as you look at the visible satellite picture, you can see there is one circulation here south and west of the Dixon Entrance in southeastern Alaska. This is actually pulling air off of the continent, so this is kind of a drier flow. There have been a few showers around, but really nothing much to write home about across southeast. The cloud cover that we see this afternoon across southern and central sections of Alaska really popping up with the heat of the day. A lot of what we're seeing here is actually snow cover across the Alaska range, and everything else is just some passing low clouds. And most of what we're seeing out across the Bering and the Aleutians is that low deck of stratus and fog. So here, we watch one more time, and a wave of low pressure was traveling from northwest to southeast, moving across the Alcan, and as it did so, it was helping to generate some of that lift needed to start up showers and thunderstorms across south central and southeastern Alaska, exactly what a lot of fire managers are not wanting to see. So here's the weather map as we stand today. High pressure at 1,036 millibars sitting across the central and western Bering. You'll notice there is a weather maker out there across the North Pacific at 1,010 millibars. The problem is it's not just going to travel eastward, it's got to go northward, and as it does so, it's running into a very stable air mass, so it's probably going to weaken more as it either moves north or simply falls apart where it is. Low pressure around the Alcan border and east of Fairbanks sitting at 1,017 millibars. Here's our disturbance we see across the eastern Gulf, potentially spreading some light rainfall across parts of southeast tonight. And then as we move through the afternoon, we're seeing showers and thunderstorms developing around the Talkeetnas. High pressure a little bit further south, also not allowing anything to move northward out of the Gulf of Alaska. We're watching for the risk of some dry thunderstorms for many areas around south central and southeastern Alaska tonight. Otherwise, it's pretty much severe, clear, and very warm across the eastern interior all the way to the west coast. High pressure sitting across the western Bering also locks in more fog and stratus as we head through tonight and for the Arctic coast. A few showers across the eastern Brooks Range are possible, as well as some showers for central southeast and across the central and western part of the chain. Heading into Wednesday, not a whole lot changes. It's still going to be unusually hot and pretty clear for most of the interior and west coast, with high pressure dragging in drier air down the west coast. You'll notice more of a north and northwesterly flow, fairly light across the Alaska Peninsula. Low pressure is still fairly weak in the eastern Gulf at 1,014 millibars, and there might be just enough moisture and certainly enough heat to bring those showers and thunderstorms to fruition again across the eastern Alaska Range and south central Kenai Mountains. High pressure up across the Beaufort Seacoast may lock in some low clouds as well as some drizzle or fog. And we have a possibility of some light rainfall for the far western Aleutians thanks to high pressure continuing that moisture feed. You'll notice our previous low pressure system has fallen apart, but now we have a new one trying to sneak in across the southwestern corner of your map. And once again, the same problem exists. It either has to go south, weaken, or try and move northward because of our very strong ridge of high pressure across the Bering and the North Pacific. We still have our circulation here across the eastern Gulf, and that may latch onto a little bit of moisture and send that into southern and central parts of southeast. Otherwise, it's smoke, it's daytime buildup of clouds, and perhaps a few showers and thunderstorms in the region for Thursday. A few more clouds up on the north slope, a couple showers across the Brooks Range during the daytime heating. Other than that, really not much more to write home about. Things look pretty much the same. Going through temperatures now, 50s and 60s were the rule for most of southeast. One exception would be up around Haines and Skagway, where temperatures were considerably warmer in the lower 60s to even lower 70s. Yakutat pegged in at 66. And then you get to Prince William Sound and temperatures skyrocketed into the mid-70s to even lower 80s as we see around Kenai. 78 in Anchorage, 82 around Squena, 85 for Talkeetna today. And these were, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So by 3 and 4 and 5 o'clock, many areas were still warmer. Some places were reported to be closer to 90 degrees. 67 around Healy, 70 around Fort Greely, 73 in Fairbanks today, 72 in Eagle, 66 the pair there for Fort Yukon, 59 in Anaktuvuk Pass. Even the Arctic coast was considerably warmer, 40s to 50s, even 60s there around Atkasuk, 59 for Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, 40s and 50s for Kotzebue Sound, 34 in Tent City, 42 around Nome, with 50s for most of Norton Sound. Galena was showing 68 degrees. Ruby, a little bit milder at 70 degrees, 70 in Grayling. Lower 70s for McGrath, with Bethel only 68. Nunivak Island had 45, with St. Lawrence Island just shy of 40. Mid-40s for the Pribilofs, 50s and 60s for most of the Alaska Peninsula. And once again, we got to say almost all, but not everyone. 79 in Chignik today, 74 in Kodiak, and 40s for most of the central and western chain. So pretty toasty for most places. Now, overnight lows, as we saw in many parts of south central, are going to remain fairly warm. Wouldn't be surprised to see some of these numbers in the mid to upper 50s. A few places in town could stay in the lower 60s. As you head north into Fairbanks and the Tanana Valley, upper 40s and lower 50s. Most of the Arctic coast will stay above freezing tonight. 45 in Nome, southwest in the 40s and 50s there. Bristol Bay closer to 60 in fact. Kodiak about 54, 40s and 50s for the Alaska Peninsula and the chain, and lower 50s for most of southeast, with high temperatures tomorrow back in the lower 60s. It looks like most of Prince William Sound tomorrow will still be in the mid-70s, with highs anywhere from the upper 70s to mid-80s for south central, considerably warmer for some places again. Looks like lower to mid-80s for many up the Susitna Valley into the Middle Tanana Valley, where it's a little bit closer to 80 degrees, 60s and 70s for the Brooks Range, south-facing slopes north of that, only 40s and 50s. 67 in Nome, Bethel looking at almost 80 degrees with the YK Delta, generally in the mid-70s tomorrow. Bristol Bay, lower 80s, Kodiak 68, and 50s and 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. Flying weather shows your most restrictions are going to be up across the North Slope into Kotzebue Sound and parts of the northern YK Delta, and then the fog and stratus, of course, across the Bering Sea and most of the central and western chain, just flirting with Dutch Harbor there for poor flight conditions. Everywhere else should be VFR, including your Chilkoot and White passes there, and VFR conditions for the central and southern parts of southeast. And again, we'll be watching for restrictions due to thunderstorms there, so stay tuned to the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit for more information during the day tomorrow. Anaktuvuk Pass looking to be VFR. Same goes for Adigan Pass, it looks like, for your Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we're not expecting any issues there. Rainy Pass also expected to be VFR. Windy Pass, we'll watch for some convection during the day. Also watching for VFR conditions. In Isabel Pass and Mentasta Pass, we expect to see an opportunity for storms there, as well as Tanita Pass on your Wednesday. Portage Pass, we could see some storms in the vicinity of the pass, probably a little bit further south. And Chilkoot and White Pass, at this point, we're expecting to see VFR for the midweek. Freezing levels show a cooler pool, see, we're having a good time now. A cool pool of air across the eastern Gulf of Alaska, a little bit lower than 6,000 feet. That's surrounding that low pressure system across the eastern Gulf. And then it just skyrockets up to 12,000 feet. This is right under that high pressure system across the southwestern coast, and surface freezing lines are way far to the north. So icing potential is really pretty limited. The moisture scant, so we have areas across the northern parts of the Yukon looking at some light to maybe isolated moderate, but mostly light, above 8,000 feet, and then way out there across the North Pacific south of the chain above 10,000 feet. So icing potential is fairly isolated at best. The jet stream is the reason why this is happening. Remember that main storm track we were talking about on the satellite picture? Here it is, and it's well south of Alaska. We've got low pressure across the eastern Gulf, high pressure locked in across the Bering, and low pressure sitting across eastern sections of Asia. So we've got another storm track across the north, and all of this is keeping all the activity right out of Alaska. So at 9,000 feet, we have more of a northwesterly flow coming across the interior, anywhere from 10 to about 15 knots. Low pressure moving across southeastern Alaska. Wind speeds are still fairly light here. The fastest moving winds are really on the western side of high pressure that are kind of guiding that warmer, wetter flow out across the far western Aleutians and well out of reach of the mainland. At 3,000 feet, you can see that convergence taking place where air is kind of coming together right here across the central and western Aleutians. Wind speeds there about 15 to 30 knots or so. Around the central and western interior, 10 to 25 knots, and very light flow coming across the central and eastern Gulf, also across the southwestern mainland, anywhere from 10 to about 15 knots. Really not much, again, in the way of fast-moving speeds. So as far as turbulence goes, really don't see a whole lot of opportunities for it at this point. Tomorrow's turbulence mainly focused on the Chukchi Sea, where that should be fairly light or isolated. And then a little bit further west of Adak, below 3,000 feet, including Kiska and probably Attu, there's room for a little bit of chop as that low pressure system sits just south of the chain here, and again is slowly falling apart thanks to high pressure across the Bering Sea. Let's look at your aviation forecast. Mostly it will be focused on flight and obscurations due to smoke probably across the Susitna Valley tomorrow, and maybe some developing showers or thunderstorms in the afternoon. Other than that, things look to be A-OK as far as flying goes. That's your aviation forecast. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
This is a drill. This message is in support of the 2005 NOAA Safe Sanctuaries exercise. This is only a drill.
Emergency responders continue to address environmental impacts
From the 800-foot container ship aground on Elbow Reef in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
Every year, NOAA responds to thousands of natural and human-induced incidents threatening life, property, and natural resources. During such incidents, NOAA is mandated to protect natural resources, provide weather data, and chart navigable waterways. To better fulfill this mission, NOAA conducted the first Safe Sanctuaries exercise in April of 2005 to bring together NOAA resources and expertise with other agencies for a hypothetical oil spill in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
Briefly, the situation is, as we know, the Gympie Portland crater went aground on the elbow. It's currently leaking fuel, and there's also a secondary release.
The Elbow is an outlying reef in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. This marine protected area is one of 13 marine sanctuaries and one coral reef ecosystem reserve in the United States. The Florida Keys is the nation's only living barrier coral reef. This exercise highlights NOAA's finest in emergency response and demonstrates its wide array of assets and capabilities. Under the Oil Pollution Act, the U.S. Coast Guard assumes the lead authority to direct an emergency response in the marine environment as the federal on-scene coordinator. In a significant incident such as this, the on-scene coordinator calls upon a cadre of specialists from around the country and assembles them in an incident command post, in this case, the Monroe County Emergency Response Center. Key among them is NOAA's Scientific Support Coordinator, who serves as a science advisor to the on-scene coordinator. For this exercise, the NOAA coordinator leads the environmental unit that will orchestrate the delivery of data and observations acquired from NOAA scientists and others. Among the initial information needed for the response is figuring out where the leaking oil is headed. The Scientific Support Coordinator dispatches an oceanographer to make real-time observations of ocean currents and oil movement at the grounding site.
You know if it's the north end or the south end where you're going to be dropping?
Northwest.
She does this by dropping biodegradable dye pellets from the helicopter and photographs the dispersal of the dye.
90, 25.
I'm away. That's great sun angle. It's hard to see it though, I think.
This green dye mimics oil and gives the oceanographer an accurate view of sea surface currents.
Okay, got what I need.
When she returns, she immediately reports the information to the Scientific Support Coordinator in the Incident Command Post. They combine these observations with others in the environmental unit who have been working around the clock to respond to the oil spill.
There's this eddy right here.
As soon as the spill was reported, the Scientific Support Coordinator also requested a team from the Center for Operational Oceanographic Products and Services.
Cotter pin for that? Got a cotter pin for that, right? Doesn't
Working with the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary staff, they assembled and deployed a quick response buoy to collect real-time data at the wreck site. Using sound waves, this acoustic Doppler current profiling package measures ocean currents throughout the water column and transmits that information via satellite and radio straight into the command post.
Well, that's what we're showing here. We got 3 times the knot measured.
Other team members monitor a pair of surface current mapper stations that were installed along the coast. These towers broadcast and receive high-frequency radio waves along the sea surface and provide another measurement of the surface currents, but on a wider scale. Process signals are also uplinked via satellite to the command post. The data from the surface current stations and current profiling buoy are verified with the aerial observations made on site by the oceanographer.
Anything that would indicate that, but I'm trying to think of would I have seen it if it was there.
It might have been the water so clear.
But more data are available and needed. The oceanographer also teams up with a meteorologist from the National Weather Service. He is a warning coordination meteorologist, and hourly he receives 2 critical updates on weather forecasts. One comes from NOAA's Weather Forecast Office in Key West.
Unlike yesterday with the true east direction that we might have expected, it looks like the models are indicating that it might be more of an east-northeast by early afternoon hours.
These are the local experts who understand the daily weather patterns in the Florida Keys and can make the most sense out of the information coming from NOAA satellites, radar, and their own observations. During a sensitive event such as an oil spill, the Key West office also dispatches an incident meteorologist dedicated to monitoring the weather specifically on the wreck site. With assistance from the sanctuary, the incident meteorologist installed a real-time monitoring system on the nearest accessible platform to the grounding site. This instrument transmits real-time observations of wind speed, wind direction, and temperature back to a small satellite dish that was set up in the Field Operations Center in Key Largo. With the most current data and frequent observations, the incident meteorologist prepares the second source of updates for the warning coordination meteorologist in the command post.
I have a forecast here ready to go. That's what I was just coordinating with the with your office there, and I can go ahead and send that to you in the next 10-15 minutes.
Integrating all the field data, the meteorologist presents the most current forecast back to the environmental unit. With all the real-time information now in hand, the Scientific Support Coordinator and Oceanographer contact NOAA's Scientific Support Team in Seattle, Washington.
Hey Tom, this is Debbie and Brad and Matt here.
Hey there.
Hey there.
Hey Bushy.
Mark Miller, CJ, and Bushy here on the Warren.
At the vessel site, we did a die drop, and the currents were about 0.6, 0.7 of a knot to the north.
The team in Seattle will now work quickly to compile all the available data in computer programs and build a trajectory model for where the oil is expected to go. At least twice per day, the Seattle team updates the trajectory model. This critical information is faxed to the command post and delivered immediately to the Scientific Support Coordinator. Whenever there is new information available, the Scientific Support Coordinator and other NOAA specialists brief the Unified Command. The Unified Command is the lead group in the command post, composed of the Sanctuary Manager, the state and federal on-scene coordinators, and the responsible party for the ship grounding. The Unified Command and the Planning Unit will use the latest trajectory model and other information to best direct the course of field operations for the response.
Time for a look at today's sea ice edge, and you'll notice a lot of changes once again up the Chukchi seacoast. Quite a bit of open water here from just about Wainwright westward. There's still a little bit of ice hugging the shore close to Point Lay and Wainwright, but further west than that, a lot of that has opened up. We're also seeing some open water east of Kaktovik and Demarcation Point. Other than that, we're still looking at some smaller ice concentrations and thinner ice north of Barrow, Prudhoe Bay, and Kaktovik. You can always get this information anytime by going to weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php and use the interactive map there. Now for your marine weather forecast for southeast, expect the winds to come up in the southern Lynn Canal tomorrow, more from the south. Looks like 5-foot seas are expected there all the way down the southern Lynn Canal, and 3-foot seas on the inside, 15-knot winds there generally from the south, and then lighter winds along the coast, some of those north of Sitka coming in from the south and southeast all the way up toward Icy Bay and Cape Fairweather, and light north and westerly winds south of Sitka, then taking a northeasterly turn around Craig and through the Dixon entrance there, those seas running around 3 to 4 feet. For Thursday, expect winds to remain from the south across the Lynn Canal. More of a westerly flow, though, will move into many areas from Yakutat all the way down the shore towards Sitka and Craig and into the Dixon entrance. Westerlies coming across Clarence Strait as well, up to 20 knots. Look for 3 to 5 foot seas on the inside and 3 to 4 foot seas along the outer coastline there for Thursday and southeast. For south central, light northeasterly winds will continue for parts of Prince William Sound, north and northwesterlies coming down Cook Inlet. A variable flow south of the Kenai Peninsula toward the eastern side of Kodiak Island. Look for 2 to 3 foot seas there, and generally small seas and light winds for most of the north and western Gulf. For Thursday, a variable flow continues inside and outside of Prince William Sound in the northern Gulf. Look for more of a southerly flow to develop east of the Barrens, about 15 to 20 knots. Southwesterlies there inside of Shelikof Strait with a 4-foot sea, and winds coming up Cook Inlet about 10 to 15 knots are expected to bring a 2 to 3 foot sea. For the Alaska Peninsula, northwesterlies around 15 to 20 knots for your Wednesday, 3 to 5 foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, and 3 to 4 foot seas for the Pacific, looking at winds there around 15 knots. By Thursday, a little bit of a shift. Winds remain light and seas remain small there for the Pacific coast, 3 foot seas there on a 10 to 15 knot wind, and similar conditions there for the Bering Sea. More of a westerly turn there inside of Bristol Bay with a 10 knot wind and a 2 foot sea for Thursday. For the Aleutians midweek, we expect north and northwesterlies for the central and eastern chain. Winds are going to remain variable for the next couple days across the central and eastern regions. 3 to 4 foot seas are expected there, and a broad easterly flow starts to pick up a little more speed. You'll recall that low pressure sitting just south of the western part of the chain here, and it's trying to move north, so that's going to bring the pressure gradient up a little bit more both Wednesday and Thursday from areas from Adak to Kiska out towards Shemya. Look for those seas to range about 5 to 7 feet for both Wednesday and Thursday. A little bit more of a southeasterly turn on Thursday. For Wednesday, a north and northwesterly flow coming down the YK Delta from St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island, 20 knots there, 3 to 4 foot seas north of Macoriac. South of that into the Kuskokwim Bay region, we're looking at 5 foot seas. A northerly flow there around St. Paul and St. George, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea. Northwesterlies across St. Matthew, 15 knots with a 5-foot sea. For Thursday, more of a northwesterly flow. You'll notice 20-knot winds coming down the YK Delta and across the northern parts of Norton Sound. Northwesterlies for St. Matthew, northerlies for St. Paul and St. George. Look for a 3 to 4-foot sea. Most areas, one exception would be outside of Kuskokwim Bay, where seas could come up to as high as 5 feet. Now for the North Slope, look for westerlies across the entire region, 10 to 15 knots for the Beaufort Seacoast, 15 to 20 knots for the Chukchi Seacoast, 3 to 4-foot seas there. We still have ice in place, so we're still not showing sea forecasts in the north just yet, of course. And across the Chukchi Seacoast on Thursday, expect 15 to 20 knot winds, more of a northwesterly flow outside of Kotzebue Sound with a 3-foot sea there on Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, high pressure sitting across the Yukon and across most of the interior tonight, also across the Bering Sea. This is keeping the weather very stable and calm across most of the central and western chain, as well as most of the Bering Sea, with stratus and fog predominant weather there. Low pressure sitting across the eastern Gulf. That is bringing in a few more clouds and a chance for some spotty showers across southeast. Some moisture has made it into the southern mountains, and because of that, dry thunderstorms have been an issue that we've been watching for today. Those have developed across the Talkeetnas and are moving southward. Across the North Slope, a few areas of showers are possible across the eastern coastal plain as well as the Brooks Range. Otherwise, fog for the Arctic coast and drizzle tomorrow. The same weather conditions will prevail for most of Alaska as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. Look for unusually hot and dry weather to continue for the central and western part of the interior, with high pressure lingering west of the St. Matthew Island waters for Wednesday. Southeasterlies will bring in some wetter weather for the extreme western Aleutians there in the form of rain or drizzle and some slightly faster winds during the day. And look for some clouds and a spot shower or two across southeast, with low pressure sitting just west of Haida Gwaii and the Queen Charlottes. More of the same there for Thursday, with a chance for some isolated showers and thunder near the mountains on Thursday afternoon in south central. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.